So since we are talking about digitalization, I would like to share with you that you can post your question to the speakers. Just go to the Gulf Food app agenda and select the topic, and you can click on post question. Then it will be pop up and we will ask it for the speaker. Our eighth session for today, it will be about Saudi food and beverage market, addressing health and wellness as the new growth wave. Our speaker will be Catalina JRK. He's a senior manager, Middle East, Africa, Farrelly and Mitchell. Welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's going to be a little different topic from what the speakers spoke so far, more from the manufacturing and technology and so on. This is more on the market and opportunities. I'm going to talk about what are the evolving opportunities in food and beverages market in Saudi, specific in consideration about what are the prevailing health challenges in Saudi. So to begin with, okay, sorry, yeah, got it. I'm Chaitanya, working with Farrelly and Mitchell in the Middle East and African region. Just a quick introduction about what we do. Farrelly and Mitchell is an advisory firm with specific focus on agriculture and food and beverages. It's probably one of the niche firms which works exclusively on food and beverages and agriculture. It's an Irish firm based in Dublin, with a head office in Dublin, and we have a regional office in Riyadh, and I'm based in Dubai. What we do is, on the agriculture, we assist a lot of government agencies in developing policies specific to agriculture, and we assist private investors in their land acquisitions and getting into agriculture and corporate farming. More on the due diligence, both on starting from the operations, technical, financial, and commercial. On the other side, on the food and beverages, we work on strategy, due diligence, all sort of due diligence, feasibility studies and value creation in terms of developing long-term strategies for the clients in the business. We've been actively in the business for about 15 years with a global presence and extensive work in Middle East and Africa, along with Europe. So I'm going to talk about 4 different points. One, in terms of what does the demographics and the economic situation in Saudi as a takeaway, what should we look at the message out of that, and relating that message with what are the bankable opportunities considering the health challenges, and final word is to see what companies should actually consider as the steps of action points. So towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to bring in more granularity in terms of what are the exact opportunities that the companies need to look at in Saudi in consideration to health and wellness. So moving ahead, talking about the demographics, favorable demographics in Saudi is one of the major contributor for the F&B growth. If you look at on the left side, the population is growing at about 1.5% CAGR, while if I look at the developed countries in Europe, North America, and Asia, more or less it is stagnant or less than 1%. So more population growth, meaning more mouths to feed. On the other side, if you look at the median age of the country, it is almost 10 years younger than the average of the developed countries, which is actually which defines the substantial opportunities to expand within F&B. For example, when the consumer is young, the behavior of the consumer is more to try different products. Say, for example, if I'm specific to bottled water, which is a very huge market in Saudi, if I'm buying, say, Nova bottle today, probably I might want to try Birain and tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow some imported European water. I may not be consistently buying the same brand, but I want to switch and try what's the difference. So end of the day, the expectations becomes what's the differentiator that the product or the company is offering in the same category. So taking that as a background, moving to the economic indicators, Saudi is almost comparable to any of the developed countries in terms of the per capita GDP, which indicates the strong spending potential of the consumer. So if I relate spending potential of the consumer with how does it impact, so the consumer is willing to spend. At the same time, he should be convinced to spend, right? So now this is the onus on the F&B companies in the region to basically to bring in more differentiation and relevance to the consumer. For example, if I'm buying yogurt, okay, a cup of yogurt, which is 170 grams, say 1 riyal for the example, and if I'm going to bring in another yogurt by saying, okay, look, I have a premium yogurt, which is 2 riyals, okay, which is 1 riyal more, 100% more in terms of price. But if it is not communicated to the consumer saying, what's the differentiator in that 1 riyal premium? Is it because of, is it because there is it is fortified calcium, or is it having extra vitamins, or is it having extra proteins or something like that? So basically, if the point here is the consumer is willing to spend, but the F&B companies need to actually address the differentiation very clearly with the consumer. And if he gets convinced, and if he feels that the product is relevant to him, then it's a win-win situation for the consumer as well as the companies. Moving ahead, while I'm talking about, see, in the previous 2 slides, I spoke about the demographics, young population base. In the next slide, we're saying that the population base, the strong consumer spending potential. But the challenge here is health challenges are going to be changing the whole consumer preference towards F&B. For example, physical inactivity. To give you more details about physically inactive definition, is a person who is spending less than 30 minutes on physical activity for 3 to 4 days a week. Or to quantify that, if a person is spending less than 150 kilocalories on physical activity per day, then that adult or the person is considered as physically inactive. And the scary thing here, if you look at the developed countries and Saudi, we're looking at about 59% of adults are physically inactive. This is from World Health Organization data. So the challenge, if I relate that, when we are not physically active, that means it leads to overweight. Then further, it leads to obesity. And obesity is the prime reason for non-communicable diseases, which includes cardiovascular, cancer, diabetes, and respiratory diseases. And surprisingly, about 73% of adult mortality in Saudi is because of these NCDs, which is primary, of that primary reason is actually physical inactivity and leading to obesity. Now, if I relate the first slide, second slide, and third slide, these are basically the data points to build the hypothesis in terms of what are the opportunities in Saudi. So now the population is young. Looking at the per capita GDP, they have the economic freedom. At the same time, the penetration of social media is extremely high in Saudi, which is basically driving the whole concept of health awareness or consciousness in Saudi. Social media is actually facilitating the whole driver to increase the health awareness in Saudi. Moving ahead, now one of the challenges that many of the companies speak recently is the economic situation. Just to give you a glance about what impact does it have on the Saudi market. If you look at it a pessimistic perspective, then it is actually a negative impact, but there is a positive in that. So looking at that, I'm going to break down into 3 points. One is the consumer per capita expenditure decreased by about 19% from 2014 to 2017. Moving ahead on the expats, leaving about 1 million expats left, expat workers left between 2017 and Q2 2018. If you look at the dynamics of expats in Saudi, roughly about 40% of the expats are dependent. So if I re-engineer this number of 1 million expat workers, that means roughly about 1.4 to 1.5 million expats altogether, including the dependents, left the country between 2017 and mid of 2018. So it's basically displacing the base population of Saudi, and it has an implication on F&B market altogether. But the positive aspect here is, on the last point, if I look at between 2016 and 2025, because of the regulatory decisions in Saudi, roughly about 5 million expats are expected to leave the country, creating 3 million jobs for Saudis, which is a positive thing here. When the Saudi employment for Saudis increase, that means more spending. So taking this to the connecting dots, so 3 points again. One, the employment for Saudis is going to increase, so 3 million jobs for Saudis. Second, higher salary to Saudis, which if you take the average salary of a Saudi national versus expat, it is 3 times at all levels together as an average. So that means more money. The third point is higher household spending in Saudi, which is roughly about the household spending is 27% more than an expat household. So cumulatively, the consumer affordability or spending potential is to get stronger here. So although expats or the base population displacement is looked at a negative way, but the positive thing is the consumer is going to get stronger in his spending. Say, to give an example, if previously we might be selling, say, 100 bottles of, say, for example, juice, earning 100 riyals, but probably I might able to sell only 70 bottles of juice, but probably earning 120 riyals now. So the market is actually moving towards the premiumization. So the consumer is basically, there's a term which is used very much in the consumer research, which is hedonistic consumer. So when you have substantial disposable income, consumer tend to try different things which will give him pleasure. Sure. Yeah, please. 4 minutes? Okay. So that will skip. So looking at the consumer affordability versus the health challenges is going to create 2 different opportunities on the health factor. One is clean foods and functional foods. Clean is more about using natural ingredients, less of colors and so on, low fat, low salt. And the functional is which gives a specific benefit, D vitamin and calcium rich, etc. So so on a general scale, dairy, poultry, bakery, and beverages are going to attract more attention, consumer attention for healthy foods. Looking at dairy is more towards functional, which gives a specific functional benefit, be it in terms of protein or probiotics, bone health, etc. Poultry is more of clean food, bakery is more of clean and functional, and beverages is more of functional. I know there are companies who are selling or existing in the market which is selling these products, but the challenge here is scalability of business to reach mass, which is actually possible only for the market leaders. So from the previous slide is more to do with at a macro level in terms of which are the segments that are going to attract attention. I try to look at more granularity in terms of what are the prevailing health challenges in Saudi, and to relate which of these health challenges can be addressed through nutrition, which is an untapped opportunity for F&B companies to look at. So probably this is something which, if you look at on the left side, these are some of the basic health issues like hypertension, overweight, diabetes, vitamin D, and so on, which is cumulatively in a complex way leads to NCDs, which includes cardiovascular cancer and musculoskeletal. These 3 diseases altogether accounts more than 50% of mortality in Saudi, adult mortality in Saudi. So looking at that, say the idea here is picking up what are the functional aspects that the F&B companies need to pick and put that as an innovation pipeline to address the market in the next maybe 2 years to 4 years of time period. So looking at that, hypertension, low sodium, vitamin D supplementation, cancer, colorectal cancer is the second largest cancer instance case in Saudi after breast cancer, which is primarily because of the colon. If you increase your fiber in your food, that could be addressed along with antioxidants. Osteoporosis is basically decrease in bone density. So that means more calcium intake should be looked at. So that way, low sodium supplementation of vitamin D, high fiber and high calcium are going to be the key aspects that the F&B companies need to look at. So if I relate that with my previous slide in terms of what are the attractive segments for the consumer that attracts consumer attention, and put a metrics, I think there is this immense scope to launch low sodium portfolio altogether. It could be, looking at the dairy, cheese is one of the commodity product. It could be as simple as cheese. Poultry, salamis, franks are part of breakfast. In terms of other products, which are like huge portfolios, snacks, condiments, these are part of every household in Saudi. Moving to vitamin D, it's more of functional, and cancer, it's more of fiber and so on. So the idea here is potentially attractive segments, opportunities here, but these are low volume products. But one of the common challenge which is faced by the companies here, the large companies, tier 1 and tier 2 companies, is they're not able to differentiate. There is always a question that how can we differentiate against the competition? So probably somebody has to take the lead and gain the heart space of the consumer. It requires a lot of investment in terms of communicating the relevance to the consumer. So in the traditional way, companies usually, we all believe that brand, price, packaging are the core aspects of the business. But I believe that is actually changing, particularly in consideration of the health and wellness challenges. So the product relevance is going to overpower the consumer preference. If I don't feel that this product is relevant to me, I might not even think about, paying more price or whatever the packaging it is and so on. So just to give you an example, I'm taking an example in the UAE. Barakat, for example, when they launched, the packaging is very basic, but it is very apt and the consumer felt the relevance of it. The basic packaging, but what went in that is freshly squeezed juice, no sugar, no additives. And now you see how big Barakat is. And another example in terms of bakery, modern bakery in the UAE. And the third example, probably Hunter Food. Snack is actually considered as unhealthy food as such. But Hunter Foods basically innovated that concept in terms of bringing in superfoods in the chips, probably ancient grains, beetroot chips, etc., etc. So basically, the companies need to bring in more relevance to the consumer to sell health and wellness products, not brand, price, packaging are secondary. In terms of what companies should do, product distribution and visibility is one of the traditionally considered aspects. But I think what is more important is product labels, basically communicating the relevance to the consumer and digital marketing. We are running after the
time. Can you please, in 1 minute?
That's it.
Yeah. Excellent. I would like to thank our distinguished guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We will keep the question during the break, because we are running after the agenda after the
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.